Michael, so some home truths for the players after the game Monday. Have you seen a response in the week to those?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, obviously they had a couple of days away from the building, which probably most clubs did up and down the country, having 2 games in such a short space of time. And obviously, I think, they come in on Thursday, worked ever so hard. Didn't feel that I needed to speak to them as a group. I just maybe spoke to 1 or 2 individually, but I think sometimes in those moments and them situations you sort of find out a little bit more about your group after the event. And listen, there might be 1 or 2 who potentially weren't happy with what I said, but the reality is I speak from a place of wanting to benefit them as well as myself, as well as the football club, because the reality is sometimes people need to hear the truth. They don't want to hear the truth, but they need to hear it. So hopefully there'll be a positive response tomorrow, and if there isn't, I suppose it works both ways anyway in my favour, because if there is, great, and if we don't, well, at least we know.
It's like you say, it's all well and good looking for a response in training, but at the end of the day it matters what happens on match day, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and listen, don't get me wrong, there was certain aspects of the game on Monday where a lot of the sort of disappointing factors came down to individual errors. There's no doubt about that. We can't get away from that, and that can be a fine line. I think there was 2 or 3 opportunities that we had on Monday to take the lead. That's something that has been difficult for the club all season. I think when you take the lead, it becomes a different game. Your confidence grows. The opposition have got to come at you. It opens more spaces, and we haven't been able to do that, which has cost us. So, yeah, hopefully tomorrow we can start the game reasonably well. We're coming up against a side that obviously a lot of talent in there on the day can be sort of very, very dangerous. But at the same time, I'd like to think that we can put them under a little bit of pressure being the home side and ask a few questions.
Yeah, obviously Barnsley only winning once in the league since the 1st of March. So there's an opportunity there, isn't there?
There is, and obviously, since the sort of change of since sort of Darryl left, Connor's got the job on a full-time basis, and it is difficult. Obviously I'm not new to this, but even sort of coming in, whether it's your group of players or players you've inherited, it isn't easy. I suppose he's had the bonus of seeing them for the majority of the season, but when you want to change things and do things your way, it takes time, and obviously it's probably taken them a little bit more time than they would have liked, but he's someone who had a fantastic career as a player, and he's clearly hoping to have the same as a manager, so we just got to make sure that we try and make it as difficult as we possibly can for him tomorrow.
Obviously this is his first job. I suppose there's not that level of footage there to maybe look at where he sets his teams up, the systems he go with, as maybe some other managers you come up against. Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, there's not massive changes to how they do it. They've clearly got a lot of good footballers in the group, especially in those central areas of the pitch, whether that's in the midfield area or up top. The combination plays are really good in around the edge of the box, and they do pack that midfield area. So I get that. If you step off, you give them time to play, they can hurt you. We have to make sure we're aggressive and not sort of powder puff and passive in our play. And if we're aggressive, certainly at the right times and we pick the right moments, we'll give them a few scares.
And how are things sort of looking for your future? Have you had any further conversations this week? Anything looking any clearer?
I'm sort of under the impression that sort of this time next week it'll either be one way or the other, and I do expect clarity certainly at the absolute latest by this time next week, because obviously we've only got 1 game to go, and I think everyone will probably be looking for a little bit of clarity, including myself, and hopefully that'll be the case.
How's the general fitness looking in the squad after this week and heading into the weekend?
Yeah, we've had a couple of lads who have been a little bit ill this week. Potentially, they'll probably be in the squad. Well, they are in the squad, but they're not feeling too great. We've had a couple of sort of knocks. Morgan Feeney's 50-50. We're going to give him till tomorrow to see how his ankle is. Obviously the 2 young boys are in and around it just in case that we need them again. And if that's the case, obviously last week would have done them the world of good before they sort of come into a big game like Barnsley.
Are you maybe looking to look at a few more of the younger players, or give the two that you gave time on Monday a bit more time as well?
Yeah, no, I think as it stands at the minute, just getting the balance right between what we need and what we need to look at. So, you know, Isaac and Jack, in a way they've earned the opportunity. They've been training with us on a regular basis for 2 or 3 weeks now, and if you look at the sort of balance of the sort of bench tomorrow, it'll probably give you a good idea why it's important to keep them involved. And listen, if opportunities present themselves for one or two of the other young players next week going into the final game, then we'll look to do that.
Obviously, you're not expecting them to play a full 90 minutes, but how can sort of them just being around the day-to-day senior match environment, or even getting a few minutes, benefit them?
Yeah, massively, and you could tell that last week, even though it was obviously a difficult game in the end in terms of the result. You know, it's like anything, results sort of mask over so many things. You know, I think I said it after the game, box to box we were fine, and the possession stats and all them type of things, shots at goal, they all stack up to be okay, but ultimately we lost the game 4-1. But for those guys, Monday would have been a little bit different to the rest of the group. They would have been disappointed that, you know, their debuts, or certainly in Isaac's case, I know Jack's already had a little bit of a look, but it would have been a little bit different. It would have felt different for them, because they probably would have still been a little bit excited and enjoyed the fact that they got on the pitch. And I'm sure that if they get the opportunity again tomorrow, they'll be looking for hopefully a little bit of a different result.
And do you have much conversation with sort of the academy managers and that side of things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, that's why sort of Pash is good, and his role is good, because it sort of builds that sort of bridge between the first team and the young players. And obviously a lot of the young players at the club, sort of, you know, whether it's 18 or slightly older, a lot of them are out on loan anyway, playing men's football. So they're getting that exposure. And then obviously when they're coming in here, we try and have as many of them with us as possible.
Obviously, you mentioned earlier you still don't know where you're going to be next season yet, but are you sort of looking at who could come in maybe and benefit you next season if you do find yourself here?
Well, I am, but I've got to be, with the greatest respect, I've got to be a little bit careful, because you know, it's one of them where if I know that I'm working here next year, then I'll be doing everything in my power to make sure that we bring the best, you know, loan players that are available, etc., etc. But right now, you know, until I get absolute clarity, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty confident that, you know, I will get the result that I want in terms of next season. But I'm a human being as well, and obviously I want to be working and passionate about working next year. Hopefully it will be with Shrewsbury. I hope that's the case, and I hope someone tells me that's the case. And if that is the case, then it'll be literally, you know, pedal to the floor, 100 mile an hour, making sure that we're fully prepared for next year.
Just finally from me, nice contingency of fans again continuing to follow the team despite the struggles all season. It's not cheap to follow football anymore. It's a credit to the fan base, isn't it, as well? Yeah,
it is, and to be fair, you know, even after Saturday, you know, the result clearly wasn't a result that we wanted, but, you know, they stayed behind at the end and clapped the players, and I was glad that the players sort of recognised that in a way, because obviously I was a bit disappointed and angry after the game, probably similar to the fans, and, you know, it's important that they recognise, like you just said then, that, you know, these people pay good money. They travel up and down the motorways every single Saturday, and, you know, from what I'm hearing, there's going to be a good turnout tomorrow at Barnsley, and one that we're looking forward to.
Best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you.